All right, we're live.
Hello, welcome to the Punk Rock Libertarians Podcast, episode 522. I am Otto. Tonight I'm joined with Jared
Hey, what's up, everybody?
and special guest, the co-founder of Free Talk Live, Mark Edge. What's
Thank
up,
you for
Mark?
having me, guys.
Nah, thanks for coming
Absolutely.
on. There's been lots of news lately, so we're kind of just, it's a better time to have someone come on and talk about lots of things all across the board. I don't know. I think we're still coming off of Ross being freed. I think that's kind of like been the biggest thing. It's still I wasn't able to make last week's show. I don't think so. I didn't get a really big chance to talk about it, but it's huge.
You know, I couldn't be more stunned to see Ross actually free. Free
Yeah.
Talk Live was on the forefront. I don't know if we were the first show, but we were certainly on the forefront of people talking about freeing Ross. And I remember, I can't remember what year it was, but something like 2017, being at Anarchapulco. Lynn Ulbricht is staying at the place where Ian and I are staying, and my wife and child and all that. And she was making calls, trying to get Ross out. This lady is so dedicated. And it just can't be said enough. She did the impossible. I mean, the impossible. Tell me somebody who managed to get done what she got done. Because Ross wasn't some kind of political prisoner. He wasn't an affiliate of Trump or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that should have just been ground up by the grist mill of the system and just incarcerated for the rest of his life in order to feed the bureaucrat machine that incarcerates people in the United States. But somehow Lynn managed to break that chain. And I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, I think usually in these cases, he would be just forgotten about. I mean, the book was thrown at him. He met the wrong judge, the wrong time, and faced down the whole state. It's almost like feels like single-handedly like we're gonna make an example of you and your people. And the fact that it was even on the table, it was crazy to think it was on the table that he could be freed after. And we always see the few standard pictures of Ross that we've seen over the past 10 years, of my involvement in the liberty movement. You see the same pictures of him, and then just to see how much he's grown since that, and he just looks it's crazy. I don't know. I know I don't mean to refer it to the hostages being released in from Hamas or whatever, but it's just it feels like people you haven't seen him forever. You're used to seeing the same old picture, and it's seeing a new picture of him. It's just weird.
Yeah, I mean, he's a brand, not a person, in so many of our minds, because how many of us ever had a chance to speak with Ross? I mean, you might get a video. I mean, did we get a video? We get some audio here and there, and things like that. I did actually speak with him on the phone when he was when we were staying in Mexico that time. But just, I mean, really stunning. I can't believe it, and I'm so happy for the family. And Lynn's incredibly dedicated, and again, it's just stunning and delightful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, good for him. Hopefully he's not bombarded with shows, people wanting to talk to him.
Oh, he's bombarded with shows already. He's going to have to come out of, he's going to come out of his shell at some point. He's going to, just like the meme said, spend the next 10 years on libertarian talk shows. And, I hope one of them's Free Talk Live. I know Joe Rogan's chasing his ass down. Sure. And, I hope that he decides to go on these shows that have supported him through thick and thin before he goes on the big boys.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
And it's not that hard. I mean, I managed to pull it off here. Here I am, just sitting in my bedroom and chatting with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, and you kind of don't blame him if he goes on. It depends on what I don't know. I don't know his situation. I'm not trying to speak for him.
He could choose not to go on any.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that I think that it would be. I think that some people could be hurt, right?
Yeah.
If he decided to go on a few of the big boys and then didn't go on some of the little ones that supported him all along the way. I'm not saying he's going to do that. I don't know. I'm just saying that, if he chooses to go, look, I need a year to kind of get less weird. I understand, but
how often was he? Because he had to spend a bunch of time in like solitary, right? Like they would just randomly throw him in there for just like, I think for like trying to access social media or something like that. I remember hearing. So like,
maybe he was in the media management unit, and it has some aspects of what we would call solitary, but okay. I don't know. I just, I wouldn't be able to say one way or the other. I don't know enough about it.
Right. But yeah, even then it's like, I can't even imagine what it's like to just.
When one gets out of prison, like you don't even know how weird you are.
Yeah.
You don't even know, like it's just
context is completely screwed up. Like exactly. You're just hanging out with other people that have probably been in there for years and years. And
and he was in for 12 and a half years.
Yeah.
That's a little bit.
Yeah. Man.
Wow.
And we're coming here to talk about my co-host and good friend, Ian Freeman, who, well, frankly, he's got an 8-year bid in federal prison, and I think he's been in for about a year now.
Yeah.
And, he's going up for an appeal next week. This is just the oral part of the appeal. There will be, it's not like afterwards the judges will say, free Ian now, or whatever they're going to say. But, this is the oral part, and it will be months down the road. Hopefully it's 2, not 6, but it could be 6. And before that, you have to check my punk rock cred.
Sure, yeah. You were talking about
Otto.
Yeah, man. Like I'm more into like hardcore and stuff like that. Like kind of that's where my wheelhouse is. Our founder, the guy who founded the podcast, was really big into punk. He probably go toe for toe. Matt Bergman.
Okay.
He started the podcast, the page, Facebook page, like 2009, I think it was. And then he started the podcast with Jared, 2015, I think it was. So we kind of took over the mantle of it, but that's awesome. So what, start throwing out some names for me.
Sure. I too had a little hardcore phase, Stormtroopers of Death and Exploited, and all the 80s bands, right? Minor Threat, these kind of guys. But I would say that my favorites, if I really had to pick favorites, would be more of what we called art fags at the time. I liked Bauhaus, Tones on Tails, let's see, Peter Murphy, Sisters of Mercy. I really like that kind of thing. The predecessors to industrial, we call them gothic at the time, and now it's moved into something entirely different, but that's okay. They can do that too. I enjoyed all that.
Yeah, like my whole range of music is so vastly wide. So it's just like we narrow it down to punk rock. It's like I was like, man, like I love Minor Threat, Bad Brains. I think they just announced a band called Bouncing Souls. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Yeah, from Jersey. They're doing a tour.
I don't do new music at all.
Well, they're from 1987. That was when they first started.
That's not too new.
Yeah, not too new, but yeah, they're coming around soon. I'm excited for that.
Good.
But I like Fugazi and just the whole wide range of spectrum of post punk and the post hardcore stuff too.
Yep, same here. I my musical taste didn't remain with punk rock, but the ethos is still there.
Nice. Yeah, I'm just. Music's always been there since as a kid. You can always bring up. I remember being real young and listening to bands like Body Count. I must have been 7 years old listening to Cop Killer and just being like, whoa, what is this? I'm way too young to be hearing stuff like this. I just steal all my brother's CDs, and that kind of just led me down this path. And so I haven't been able to shake it.
That was that Ice-T?
Yeah, Ice-T,
Ice Cube, Ice-T.
Ice-T.
Did that one? Yeah, that was big news back in 1990.
Yeah, the video of Charleston Heston reading Body Count lyrics He was just like, he's just reading off the thing. He's like, die, pig, die, die, die. It was catchy, isn't it? And I just that clip just lives, like, just makes me laugh so hard. It just lives in my
Was
brain.
it Charlton Heston?
Yeah, Charlton Heston was reading the lyrics of it, like at
He was
some
a bit
rally or something.
gun-supporting conservative back then.
Yeah. And it was just funny hearing him read those lyrics, and he just looks up at the he's like, catchy, isn't it? But yeah, like, and then, you know, like as a kid growing up, like Bad Religion, stuff like that, always. But yeah, we're Pennywise, always classic.
Yep.
I think like Warped Tour's coming back. I think that's something I just heard, and I'm like, wait a minute, like
they're bringing them
all
back.
What?
All the
and they're actually trying
all
to
the
like go to
trips.
Yeah, they're just trying to make money off of it.
Yeah,
but
it's all just making money off of people that
Right.
don't have money.
Working for a living sucks, guys. Like,
yes.
If you can just travel around in a bus or a plane and play guitars for a living, well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
it
think
must be
like
nice.
yeah, now it's kind of like moved since they had to they stopped doing Warped Tour. Like now they just have like these big fests, like they have Punk Rock Bowling out in Vegas, where it's like a gathering of all these bands, but it's like $200 for like 2 days. Just man, I don't know. I just like out there plus airfare.
Just like the one day, like just show up at the Baltimore Arena and just like see a bunch of bands and then go home.
Yeah. That's kind of like the old days, and I'm not even that old, so it's it's like things have changed, and now I'm just an old man who's poor. So I'm just I used to be a young kid who's poor, now I'm an old man who's poor. So yeah, I couldn't imagine standing outside for like 12 hours in the heat. I couldn't imagine doing that anymore.
No, I did that a lot back in the day, but yeah, I like a nice like 2-hour show, go home.
Right, even that feels like enough for me. I'm like, okay, I'm good for the month,
Yeah.
Well, it kind of matches with how I met my friend Ian Freeman. We met. His name wasn't Ian Freeman at the time. It was Ian Bernard. Yeah. And we met at a rock station in Sarasota, Florida. Although I did a little bit of on-air work in a variety of different stations in Sarasota, I largely was just a sales guy, and he was the nighttime DJ. So as low on the DJ totem pole as you could get. And we struck up a friendship, talked a lot. We'd, argue politics and these sorts of things. And then one day, it was a couple of years after we had met, he wanted to start a weekend show on a station that we had recently flipped from rock to that same station, from rock to Hot Talk. And he told me about it. I told him I told my friend, the manager, Big Jim Davis, the voice of WOR. He said, give me an air check, which is basically an audition tape. Ian took some time, got that audition tape back to him, and got some time on Sunday night from 7 to 11 p.m., which is basically Siberia on a 4,500 watt FM station coming out of Rotunda, Florida. And it's I had just broken up with my fiance of like a year and a half, 2 years, I don't know, something like that. And hope she's not listening. I was devastated, Heather. Sorry. Broken up with my fiance, and went. He asked, "Hey, do you want to man the phones while on this show while me and this other guy do it?" And I said, "Sure, I got time." I wasn't committing to doing anything other than manning the phones on the first night.
That's how they get
and this studio, I know it well, had 3 RE20s hanging in it. You can see one right here in front of me if you're watching the video. And when Ian, this was the first night we talked about stopping smoking in bars in Florida. This was on the ballot. And
what year was that?
2002, November 2002.
Oh wow, so that was before. Wow. See, in Maryland, I don't think that happened until like 2006.
Yeah, I remember in PA that was when I was in college, and that was like 2007 or somewhere around there.
Yeah. It took a lot of places. Well, Florida was warmer. It is more reasonable to kick people outside to smoke in Florida than it is to kick them outside in, rural Pennsylvania.
That's a good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good point.
And anyway, I just kind of disagreed with some things or wanted to put a finer point on some of the stuff he was saying. Now, taking into consideration, I didn't call myself a libertarian at the time. Mm-hmm. I held some ideas that would coincide with libertarianism, but I would have called myself anything a ditto head, a Rush Limbaugh fan. This was 23 years ago, so forgive me. And we basically had a chemistry that drove this show where I argued with Ian for 20 years, just made a living out of it. And don't disagree. I don't agree with Ian on everything, or even probably most things. But I do think that he's an extraordinarily honest man, and he is highly ideologically driven. So when Bitcoin came out, and Free Talk Live was the first media in the world to discuss Bitcoin, on December the 28th, 2010, a caller named Jeremy West called in from Australia, and he said, "Hey, have you guys heard about the magic internet money? And it's Bitcoin." And actually, you can go hear the audio. It's on our YouTube channel.
Nice. And
people can find it. First Bitcoin Free Talk Live might be the way to do it. And we, of course, said, "Is it backed by gold or silver? No, then it sucks." Right? But important thing happened that night. A man was listening to the show who happened to also be the head developer of Bitcoin. His name was Gavin Andreessen, and he was an amplifier of Free Talk Live. He paid us, a small amount per month in order to get ad-free shows and that kind of thing. And Gavin heard that, and he pounded out an email and said, "Hey guys, I'd like to get together with you and explain Bitcoin a little more." And he came on up in January of 2011, and he said, let's meet for lunch. We went to Thai Garden in Keene, New Hampshire. We all ordered the same thing, as interesting as this might be, the Drunken Monkey, which was a spicy dish, and Ian likes to show off how much he can eat spicy dishes. And I'd like to show him that it's not that special. This is not a personality trait. This is not something laudable. So anyway, we had the Drunken Monkey over the course of 2 or 3 hours. Gavin explained Bitcoin to us in a way that we could understand. I offered to sell him podcast ads for Bitcoin, becoming the first ad venue in the world to accept cryptocurrency for ads. And we talked about it again that night. Now, this is also auspicious because that night, a man named Roger Ver, who later became known as Bitcoin Jesus, heard the show. And he stayed up 3 days, is his story, and just devouring information on Bitcoin. And this is important to him specifically because Roger is very fastidious about his sleep. And so the fact that he stayed up 3 days or, whatever, broke his sleep patterns was really sort of meaningful to him. And as a result, he invested in a lot of the early businesses in cryptocurrency. And he went from a millionaire with a Lambo already to what one could only presume is a very, very wealthy man. Now, I don't know how much money Roger's got. I don't know how many Bitcoin Roger's got. I don't know how many, because there was a big break at some point between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah.
And
right.
Roger, as I understand it, sold 90% of his Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash. But that's with the amount that it's possible that he owed. Because here's another part of the story. So Roger demanded after a few months to pay his ad bill on Free Talk Live, which at the time was $3,500 a month in Bitcoin.
Wow.
And so I know at least one, because my wife was the business office manager, I know at least one invoice that the price of Bitcoin was just over $1. So we were receiving BTC, and at that time you didn't even know to like change your addresses or to obvious. Like, I didn't know how to do this stuff. There wasn't a walking. You didn't have a wallet on your phone. There was one wallet, and that was the wallet that Satoshi Nakamoto made. Mm-hmm. Gavin Andreessen spruced it up a little bit, but it's basically the mining wallet and core wallet, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And that wallet, we received a lot of Bitcoin into that thing because we used it for basically every single one of the advertisers that paid, and everybody who wanted to advertise anything in Bitcoin came to Free Talk Live back then because there was nothing else. Yeah. We helped launch. One of our co-hosts was one of the first hosts on Bitcoin Show, Let's Talk Bitcoin, and so we were very, very early in this. Now, it may sound like I'm bragging, because I am, but really the important part here is that you understand that Ian Freeman is an ideologue. Mm-hmm. Ian Freeman's an ideologue for specifically Bitcoin and libertarianism. He believes these two things are linked. And that if we could we were, Free Talk Live were some of the founding members of Bitcoin Not Bombs. And we believe that the military-industrial complex is funded through fiat currency, through this sort of Federal Reserve system that we have. Mm-hmm. And he believes that using their money funds them. And I don't disagree with him. I'm just telling you what he believes, because this is important. They didn't throw me in prison.
Right.
They did subpoena me. That's a less interesting part of the story, unless you happen to be my immediate family. So basically, Ian wanted to do whatever Ian could do to get Bitcoin in the hands of as many people as possible. So he went on to localbitcoins.com. He had an account with 5-star rating. He was very proud of it. He serviced a lot of people, sold a lot of people Bitcoin, and turns out some of those people were scammers. Now, we don't know how many. It looks like at least half a dozen people got scammed by some scammers. Maybe it was one guy. Maybe it was more, half a dozen guys. We don't know anything because the federal government really could never say. Ian Freeman, to the best of my knowledge, is the only person that has ever been sort of arrested for scams, and he never committed one. So essentially, he sold the Bitcoin, and the FBI built this case over the course of 5 years. Apparently, they couldn't just arrest him the first year. They had to let, those that protect and serve you had to let the scam, as they call it, go on for 4 more years. But they did, and then they decided to come in the middle of COVID. In the process, by the way, one of their agents, one of their, not an employee, but one of the people that they had sort of working for them, gave me COVID. And so, that's how much the federal government actually cared about COVID, is they sent somebody in with COVID to give it to us. Our practices managed to stave off COVID. Whatever those practices might have been, it was them who gave it to us. And anyway, they brought in 2 Bearcats, which are basically tanks. They brought in SWAT teams, and they busted the doors in. I'm sure you can go see the video. Yeah, you go to freeian.org, freeiannow.org, mm-hmm. and you can see the whole thing that I'm going to tell you, out in video.
Videos of it.
Yep. It's really amazing stuff. And they just trashed the studio. Just trashed it. Dan, did you say something?
No, I was checking my microphone. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem at all. So, they didn't have to. They could have just taken Ian, but they pulled out they just pulled wires out randomly. We couldn't get things back from an audio standpoint for weeks. The show was taken off the air. The First Amendment right. Free Talk Live is a show where anyone can call in and talk about anything. And it's basically the only show in America that does that, or did at the time. Now it's a weekend show. And basically because of the raid and what the feds did, they sublimated the First Amendment rights of, the millions of listens. I don't know how many listeners we have, but, call them the tens of thousands of listeners we have in a given week. Mm-hmm. Maybe hundreds of thousands of listeners. We saw numbers as high as 500,000 at one point.
Wow.
Those 500,000 people could call in to Free Talk Live, and they could talk about whatever they wanted to talk about, and then they couldn't because some FBI stooge head, and he wasn't even a freaking FBI agent. He's just somebody they drug in from some police squad who's willing to take a little extra check in order to, put the boot on somebody's neck. And, we'll pull out some wires. I don't want them recording me. And yeah, so you can see I'm pretty bitter about that particular part. I did confront one of the FBI agents about that in the court, and she withheld cussing me out, but didn't seem to have anything else to really say about it. Mark, never mind. And that's what her response was. And so Ian was drug off to jail, and there's 2 or 3 years worth of trial going on and these kind of things. Ian gets brought before a jury of his peers over the course of a 2-week trial. They propose that he money transmitting without a license, money laundering, conspiracy to commit money laundering, 4 counts of tax evasion. Now, tax evasion isn't tax fraud or filling out your form wrong or anything like that. Tax evasion is the highest level of tax fraud. And this, I think, is the shoe-in at his trial, his appeal, is because I remember his lawyer, Ian's lawyer, Mark Sisti, saying to the IRS agent, they had 2 IRS agents there. One of them was specifically talking about the tax evasion charges. So it's possible that Ian Freeman owes nothing. And she said, yes. Now, that doesn't sound like tax evasion to me. They don't know how much Ian owes. Ian doesn't know how much Ian owes. But a jury of his peers found him guilty. And I'll tell you what, this jury would have found him guilty if they had charged him with Jimmy Hoffa's murder. Like,
what district? Where was he charged?
What's that?
Do you know what federal district was he charged in?
So this was the District of New Hampshire, and now he's moving up to the First Circuit, I believe, the Circuit Court of Appeals in Boston.
Okay, I was gonna say, because if it was Eastern District of Virginia, he's done. There's no
so
coming back.
So what was it about the way they picked the jury that made it so against him, or is it just the way they painted him?
I have the jaded part of me is going to pop out here. I lost every bit of hope that I ever had for the jury system during that trial. I was there for 80% of what happened, perhaps even a larger percentage than that. I'm trying to, be generous. And I know what those people heard. And when I walked out of that courtroom, when they, retired the jury to send them to deliberate and that kind of thing, I believed that Ian Freeman was going to possibly be found not guilty of everything. I'd sat through that, and I heard not a bit, not one, what I would consider reasonable doubt that he had committed any of the crimes that they said. But that jury came back guilty on all 8 counts. Now, this is important. The judge later dismissed one of the counts. So he said that the jury was in error on one of the counts, but this other 7 are fine.
I didn't know the judge could do that.
I don't know how they can do that either. This is the thing, I've lost all hope in juries, because to me what it looked like was group dynamics. The prosecutors made a good argument that Ian Freeman is an unlikable guy. And you know what? I made a living off of Ian Freeman's unlikability. I argued with that guy constantly. So I understand he's not a particularly likable dude. But that isn't guilty. That's just unlikable.
Right.
And he he's a principled libertarian with, I'd say, a touch of the autism, but he took a test online that said he wasn't autistic, so it seems like the most autistic thing I've ever heard.
Right.
Anyway, so he's found guilty. The judge, gives him a little time to get his affairs in order and that kind of thing, and then sends him off to the pokey. I think he's been in jail for certainly over a year. And he's, trying to figure things out and get his appeal handled.
Wow. It feels like that was just like yesterday.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been over a year now.
Yeah, I was hoping to see him at the appeal, but he will not be able to attend.
That's awful.
Wait,
so
let me know if my
attend
mic's
his
a little
own
hot.
appeal?
I've just turned down my mic a little bit. Let me know if it's an issue.
Oh,
Yeah, I
no,
think
no,
it
you
sounds
sound
better
fine.
now.
Yeah.
I think it sounds better now. Yeah, it was just a little bit, getting a little, but yeah, you're good.
So
Dan,
he can't go, but we do, Jacob Hornberger, Future Freedom Foundation, FFF.org, and, many-time presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, or nominee, or candidate for nomination, or however you want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob Hornberger. Bumper's going to be there, and he has asked everyone to, come, be respectful, and let's support Ian. And I am all for that. There's nothing that could keep me away. I mean, people could smear themselves in peanut butter and take all their clothes off. I don't care. I'm going. But I hope that I do hope that this. I can't imagine personally. I cannot imagine these judges not finding him not guilty of something. Now, I don't know what the proper term is, acquitting or, whatever, remanding. I have no clue what the legal terminology is, but I do know as a person who sat there, the evidence just wasn't there. It was just bad. And supposedly conspiracy charges. It's conspiracy to commit money laundering. So supposedly conspiracy theories really don't do well on appeal. This is what I've read afterwards. So the hope is that it has to be that conspiracy charge has to be the one that is undone. Otherwise, cutting the other charges are insignificant. Now, it could be that if they cut the charges, say the tax evasion, which I believe those 4 charges out of the 7 that are remaining are the most likely to be undone. If those are undone, the complaint is that the whole thing should be a retrial. And if that's the case, then presumably he is released for a retrial, and they go back and they do it all over again. Now, I would presume they would just give it up at this point because he signed a piece of paper after he was found guilty and all that stuff that kind of gave up $3 million in Bitcoin that they took. They took a bunch of gold that wasn't related in any way, some Bitcoin. Let me tell you how unrelated the Bitcoin they took is. So Roger Ver back in 2013, maybe 2012, sent to the studios of Free Talk Live a box of Kazacious solid Bitcoins. So these were the 2011 error coins. So maybe this was 2011, maybe it was 2012.
Yep.
And these Kazacious coins, we had column 50. They look like Chuck E. Cheese tokens, and our job
way more valuable.
Well, now they are, but they weren't then.
Yeah.
I remember that year when we went to what we called the first Bitcoin convention, PorcFest of 2012. I don't know which one. Anyway, we went there and a Bitcoin was $6 because I remember getting one of Doug Scribner's Miss Porcupole. Doug Scribner's smoothies, and it was a Bitcoin, and I was so happy to be able to spend my Bitcoin on something besides Girls Gone Bitcoin and VPN services. And I got more than one smoothie. Doug Scribner got more than one Bitcoin from me. And I also paid for a lot of things with these Kazacious coins. Roger said, distribute however you wish to distribute them, these Kazacious coins. So I distributed, they had 50 of them. Ian's like, I can't be bothered with this. You do it. But he also sent in that package a 100 Bitcoin gold bar. Now it was only plated in gold, but it had 100 Bitcoin sort of contained within a little phrase on it. That we can trace the provenance of this, and we know for a fact that it is not in any way related to the buying and selling of Bitcoin in 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 and 2020, as the accusations stand. And they know it too. They were very clear. That's why they got this piece of paper signed, was essentially, Ian, we are going to mess with you up and down. We are going to sue you. We're going to bring the IRS in. We're going to do whatever we can do unless you sign this piece of paper. Basically giving up this Bitcoin bar. Now, by the way, they pulled the sticker off the back of this thing, rendering it essentially useless and putting the 100 Bitcoin online in order to keep it in safekeeping. Now, I can understand those FBI agents can't be trusted, and they'll steal that Bitcoin gold bar.
True.
But it's kind of like taking Action Comics #1, the first appearance of Superman, ripping every page out, taking a photograph of it, and saying, we saved it for you, because the collectability of this thing, the numismatic value of it, disappeared.
Yeah.
So anyway, I basically gave away all those coins, and if you happen to be in Keene, New Hampshire in that time frame or at that Pork Fest, you probably got one.
Wow. But so the appeal, what day is the appeal coming up?
February the 5th.
February 5th. And Dan, welcome to the show, man. You're going to that, right?
Hey, Otto, how you doing?
What's up, man?
So I had a question about the case real quick. Did the money laundering charges itself were thrown out and they were actually called unfounded. So the trial itself is for conspiracy to money launder, but the money laundering charges itself were thrown out already. So how does that work?
Yeah, how does that work? So I'm going to do my best to give you their argument. Understand that I disagree with their argument.
Yeah.
Their argument where there are two cases of money laundering that went on. One of the cases, the actual money laundering, and let's just go through that, Dan. You brought it up, so let's talk about the situation. Ian Freeman loved to go down. He loved every liberty activism thing that was going on everywhere. He would go downtown, Keene, New Hampshire, for a 420 celebration at late in the evening on Fridays, and he would go there to sort of hang out. And as far as I know, he didn't participate, but I don't know. I didn't go down there too often. And there was a guy that would show up, and that guy at some point or another said, "Hey, I'm a drug dealer, and I love Bitcoin. I love your Bitcoin machines. Thank you." And then Ian said, well, first off, the guy comes back and says, "Hey, I need to trade some USD for some Bitcoin." Ian said, "Sorry, you told me you're a drug dealer. And look, I don't care what you do for a living. I don't do business with drug dealers. That's the way somebody gets arrested. That's the way they've arrested everybody up to this point. So no, thank you." And he said, the guy said, "Well, I'm just going to go down to your machine and get them." And Ian said, "Well, I can't stop you, but I don't give you permission," or something to that effect. And that was effectively what the claim was. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I can stop you, was the money laundering that they claimed. And I think the judge rightly called it unfounded and tossed it out.
Yeah.
The money laundering that they're talking about was somehow the three defendants in this, Rich Paul, Aria DeMezzo, and Ian Freeman, said amongst themselves, "Let's work with Nigerian princes to rip off little old ladies." Now, I was there at the studio 2 different times when Ian talked to. Now, these people weren't in business really together too much. And, Aria ran her own sort of operation and, was really separate, but whatever. That wasn't the story they told at the trial. And so I was there when Ian talked to a couple of people, and he asked questions like, have you ever met your husband? Do you know what a romance scam is? Are you trying to invest in Bitcoin? And in fact, these scammers had given these little old ladies that they used as cutouts. And by the way, there was a little old lady on the stand who admitted to the things that Ian was accused of. They didn't cart her off in handcuffs, mind you, but they told them to say these things. Oh, look, he's going to ask you this, and he's going to ask you that, and he's going to. But the conspiracy theory is that the conspiracy charge is basically Ian knew. There's no way he didn't know, and this is where I think Ian's lawyer's at fault, because Ian's lawyer basically tried his best to make sure I didn't get on the stand, because I would have said, look, Ian Freeman definitely didn't know. Here's the stories that happen. And Ian's kind of like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, only not funny. He did not know that those people, and I think that one little phrase would have niggled at their mind, the reasonable doubt, because would a reasonable person presume that? I do think a reasonable person might, after 3 or 4 years, say, there's probably some scams going on here. But Ian knew that too, but he was trying to catch the scammers. He was trying to stop them. He said as much to me. He was like, if I find out somebody's a scammer, I stop doing business with him. I try to get as much information on him as I can. But
why were they trying to keep you off the stand?
Because I'm a convicted felon, and he felt like that would be bad. Plus, this is Mark Sisti, Ian's lawyer. Plus, I told Mark Sisti, look, I'm a talk show host. I talk for a living. Don't tell me what I can and can't talk about. Back when Ian first got arrested, Mark's like, don't talk about it. Don't talk about anything. You know how defense attorneys are. If they can't control the narrative, and by the way, when he was trying to control the narrative, he didn't do a very good job of it.
Apparently not.
But yeah. Anyway, he kept Bonnie and I off the stand, and he allowed the Shire Free Church to be painted as a fake organization. And it's not. Free Talk Live has always been a moral teaching organization, and it is closer to a preacher program than it is to mimicking Rush Limbaugh. How does Rush Limbaugh know what's conservative and what's not? How did he know what's Republican and what isn't? Well, I know what's libertarian and what's not, just off the top of my head. You can ask me any question in the world, and I can answer the libertarian answer right now, because it's a moral code, and that's what sets it apart. It isn't politics.
Right.
Thank God, because our politicians are kind of awful. but us moral libertarians, on the other hand, we're pretty cool.
Yeah. So Dan, you're headed to Boston next week?
Yeah, I'm planning on going down there too.
Nice.
And I'm guessing Boston is very close to the Free State Project, so there's really a big presence coming from that direction also.
I don't know how many. No one's. There's no way to know. This is one of the difficulties with what we do, is we have no clue. Will there be 10? Will there be 100? Will there be 1,000? We don't know. But we welcome everybody, and again, the request has been made that we sit respectfully. We support Ian. I can assure you that there won't be anybody from the other sides. They don't care.
Yeah.
There was almost nobody, almost all of the time that I was at that trial. None of the people, the people that cared enough about this to testify or whatever, it's not like they sat in the rest of the time. Their families weren't there, anything like that. Ian's people were there the whole time. Now, that probably raised the credibility of it being a cult, but how can you say a church is, on one hand, a cult, and on the other hand, illegitimate?
Yeah.
At the same time. And I don't know how they did it, but the jury, that's what they decided.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully the support will be helpful, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Dan, you were there at Ross Ulbricht's trial. Isn't that what the request that was made by the lawyer there too?
I was not at the Ross Ulbricht trial, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay. I thought you were. Sorry.
No, yeah. I was gonna say, I was like, damn, I didn't know that, Dan. Like,
Yeah.
The one thing I realized about Ian's case is in the beginning of the trial, they had a bunch of old people that were scammed and love scams. Now, and they were, from what I understand, taking a stand, and but none of these people had anything to do with Ian. So apparently, this all got dismissed, but the jury itself got very tampered because they were watching all these old people losing all their stuff, and they felt bad.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're all, the jury itself was poisoned, and now they're looking to hang somebody. And now here's Ian.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. This is where I believe the judge erred. He decided to let all this stuff go with all these people to show the harm. And Ian had nothing. Ian wasn't accused of ripping any of these people off. The accusation was that he somehow conspired with some people to take advantage of these old people who would inevitably come if he sold Bitcoin. And that, I can assure you, is a conversation that was never had. And as a matter of fact, Ian, on more than one occasion, worked with local police to get people's money back to them, and was sometimes successful, and was ripped off more than once. Certainly attempted to be, but I know he was ripped off at least once by scam artists. So it's not like he wasn't working with these people. These were just scam
are they going to
artists.
go after like the Target cashiers that sell the gift cards that people use to scam?
Yeah.
It's a great analogy. I mean, who's going to Target to buy these gift cards, these Visa gift cards? Really?
Yeah.
It seems like almost everybody was going, almost, like what percentage, 80% of them are going there to, give the money to their Nigerian prince or North Korean cutout.
Well, that's the thing that's always funny to me when they try to criticize Bitcoin for being used by scammers or being used by, for illicit means or whatever, because I mean, by the numbers, I mean, obviously the FRN, the dollar far outweighs Bitcoin in terms of the amount of scams propagated. And then you've got the gift cards, you've got PayPal. I mean, you've got all of it is used. It's just a tool.
The claim was that Ian knew because he was getting such a large percentage on the exchange. So it's like 10% was the exchange rate. Sometimes it was even as high as 14%. But tell me, if local Bitcoin didn't exist, if Ian didn't exist, first off, if Ian didn't exist, people would have just gone to other sellers on local Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? If local Bitcoin didn't exist, they'd go to Coinbase, right? These little old ladies wouldn't have a problem getting an account at Coinbase. No. They could have. And I'm sure there are legion of little old ladies, and probably men too. I don't know what the whole situation is. Yeah. Geriatrics that are going to Coinbase and exchanging FRNs for Bitcoin, and we never hear about that.
Right.
Now, I'm not trying to take Coinbase down. What I'm trying to say is that this is just like picking up the low-level dealer on the street, even if he was guilty. This is just a low-level dealer on the street and leaving the kingpin to continue to do what it does.
Right.
You know what this reminds me of, too? Roger Stone. He had his house broken in the middle of the night, and his wife was terrified. So I think she's hard of hearing. She didn't know what was going on. They came in there with guns blazing. And Roger's like, they could have just called me on the phone, and we could have just, gone down to the station and talked it out. They did the same thing to Bonnie and Ian in the middle of the night with a bear cat and a tank, right?
Yeah, they also lied on the stand when they said that we always do a call out. A call out's when Ian Freeman, come out with your hands up. And you can't take me live, coppers, right? The claim was that they did a call out and that they had waited a commensurate amount of time for that call out. The vans pull up, they count 8.7 seconds, and bam, the doors go. We have no clue if they even did a call out. Of course, there's not audio. But if they did a call out, they did it out the window of a Bearcat as they slammed into the door.
Right.
Bunch of liars.
It's so fucked up, man. It's always at night, and it's like I think they do that stuff for the
5 a.m. I think in this case.
Yeah, so like they do it so it's dark out, so it's like it leads the people who see that like, oh, he must be dangerous because they had to come there at nighttime when I was sleeping, so he didn't get into a gun shootout or whatever. Like,
don't the really dangerous people stay up all night?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
are the real drug dealers? Are they going to bed at like a nice hour, like 9:30 p.m.
Right. It's weird, man. But it's
I
like
think
they
they
for
just want
show.
to catch you off guard and just you're just like blinded, throwing the flashbangs. You're just like, what's happening?
Yeah, embarrass you, bring you out in your pajamas or your underwear, humiliate, scare your neighbors. Like it's all
setting
tactics.
up the narrative that they're going to use in court. Like, oh, this,
it's like
terror. I will say, Ian Freeman's roommate did have a lot of guns, and they're completely legally owned. They sent an ATF agent trying to get him to somehow slip up. They used me and my possession of a plastic sword cane, umbrella sword, as one of the reasons why they needed to do what they did. What they needed to do was have an excuse to use their Bearcats. Otherwise, they wouldn't have, like, what do we got these things for if we don't run them into people's houses?
Can't get more if they don't use the ones I got, right?
Exactly.
Can't break this one. Replace it.
This is weaponized lawfare. Is that what you would call this?
It's absolutely lawfare. So the FBI agent in charge for most of this investigation was a man named Phil Christiana. Now, Phil goes way back with the Free State Project and Ian Freeman. Now, some of this is speculative. This is sort of things that Ian and I put together. But basically, Phil sent in several people to different different Free State Project events, trying to buy weapons and things like that, right? And of course, you walk in, I don't care what your haircut looks like. You walk in saying, hey, y'all know where I can get me a sawed-off shotgun or a fully automatic rifle? It isn't going to go well. Like, these people, that's not what the Free State Project's about. Mm-hmm. And there might be some. There's certainly some gun nuts, but they're not gonna. They know a little something.
Yeah, we know a Fed when we see one.
Right. Well, I don't know that that's true or not.
Yeah.
But he sent somebody into the Keene Activist Center trying to do the same thing. Is the speculation, and he attempted to get Rich Paul, later called Nobody, to go into the Keene Activist Center wearing a wire, presumably to ask if he would have agreed to it. He would have asked Ian a series of questions or whatever and got him, arrested. Rich refused to do so and went to jail for a good little bit of time over all of that. And basically, I feels like finally I got you. Now, Ian had more than one time videoed Phil Christiana. So he had ruined his chances of being an undercover, as far as Phil's concerned, right? As though anybody cares about Phil Christiana's YouTube appearances. But he had, basically ambush interviewed him. Hey, Phil, what you testified at this trial against a guy just peacefully growing some weed. How do you sleep at night? Things like that. And I think that Phil took it badly. You could see the smug look on his face, like, I'm going to get you. I am going to get you. And he did. He really did. And the American people, I feel like they just, our servants are here to protect us. And that's what the jury decided. Now, I've never interviewed any of the people from the jury. It's best if I don't. But I'm really disappointed in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, I didn't realize it was that much of a sweep. I mean, we heard about it, but we haven't been following. I personally haven't been following the trial. Yeah. I didn't follow it that closely. I just kind of heard the results, but that's just so messed up. That's why it's like, it's awesome that you came on here, kind of give us this background information and stuff. People who don't know all the details, everything. So, I mean, if there was anything, you could suggest that people like out there listening, like, what could we do? I know, you said the trials on, or the appeals being heard on February 2nd. Is that what?
February 5th.
February 5th. Okay.
Right.
I think that's like a Monday.
Basically, what I would ask from everybody is go to freeiannow.org, freeiannow.org, and sign the petition asking for the freedom of Ian Freeman. You know, whether or not he's guilty of unlicensed money transmission, he's done all the time that there is for that particular charge. He definitely didn't conspire to rip little old ladies off. He definitely didn't evade taxes by using a cover church. And the rest of those things are just nonsense. So if you like the idea of the justice system working properly, well, you should sign this petition. If you think that the justice system gets weaponized against people who would otherwise not be put in prison, then you should definitely go sign this. And if you listen to Free Talk Live, and you enjoyed what we did for the course of 20 years, do Ian a favor and go there and sign at freeiannow.org.
Nice.
If you want to come and you're in the area of Boston, we'd love to have you, but I have no clue how many people are going to be there. And, I'm definitely going to be there. And we'll be there representing Free Talk Live and hoping that Ian gets the best shake out of all of this, but we'll see.
I was gonna say, like, how do you have hope for anything coming from this? How do you feel? Like,
yeah, I do. I believe that the tax evasion charges will be dropped. I hope that so I'm like at 80-20 on the tax evasion charges. I'm at like 50-50 on the conspiracy charges, just because, I'm burned, once bitten, twice shy when it comes to this whole thing. I think that he should be found not guilty on it. And then when it comes to the unlicensed money transmission charges, I don't think he'll be found not guilty on those, but I do believe that he should get a new trial on them. And so therefore he will be released either way if he's found not guilty of those other 5 charges. There's the conspiracy and unlicensed money transmitting, and the conspiracy to unlicensed money transmission. So we'll see how those
so
work
if
out.
any of those are not guilty, he gets released and it's a retrial? Is that the idea?
I would hesitate to say that, Jared. What I would say is any not guilty or acquittal or whatever it's called is a good thing, because it could result in a retrial. That is a possibility even without any of them being undone, as it were. Then I believe that there was no evidence presented that showed that Ian evaded taxes. So I believe those 4 out of the 7 charges that he is found guilty of, will be undone. But the one is the sort of the linchpin of all of this is the conspiracy to commit money laundering. That is the one, from what I can tell, 8 years of the 8-year sentence is from. The rest are concurrent. So they're effectively inconsequential. If you pull out a 3-year, let's say there's 3 years for the tax evasion, pull out one of those 3-year pins, and there's still the 8-year long sentence that makes it 8 years.
Gotcha. So that one really has to go to get any sort of like sentence reduction, or
it could be that they get rid of the 4 tax evasion charges and then remand the whole thing back for another trial, in which case he's able to bond out and then, do it all over again. If they do it all over again. But I think they'll just say, good enough. We got the money.
Yeah, they got their money. They, they got to throw him in jail for a bit. And
one thing that was really interesting was at his sentencing, the judge is like, now I want to warn you, Mr. Freeman, I don't want you standing here and grandstanding. I don't want you pointing fingers at the system. I would warn you against that. It's not going to go well for you. It felt like Breakfast Club all over again. Mess with the bull, you get the horns, right? And Ian stood up, and clearly he had written all this out ahead of time. So all the remonstrations from the judge were pointless, because Ian said, first, I want to apologize to everybody. I'm sorry to my family. I'm sorry to my friends. I'm sorry to everybody that this affected. Second, I'm in a really difficult position. On one hand, I believe I'm not guilty of these charges that I've been found guilty of. On the other hand, I'd love to see any money you take from me go to these victims, because I certainly don't want it to be used like to drop $1 million bombs on $10 tents. That's my phrase. I don't know if he used that one during the trial.
Buy more Bearcats.
Yeah, buy more Bearcats or whatever it is that the state does. And the judge was gobstopped. I mean, he stammered after Ian gave his speech because he really expected something, anything. And I think he did one of two things. He either was prepared to give 10 years or he was prepared to give 8 years, because he gave 8 years. He maybe pared the 10 years down to 8 years, saying, well, this looks like a genuinely contrite individual, and I'll do this. Or he was going to give 8 years anyway and prepared to bump it up to 10 years if Ian came out the way he did. I can't tell you which of those happened. I wasn't inside of his brain when it did, but I can tell you he stammered for a long period of time, not knowing what to do. He had built up in his mind that Ian was this Alex Jones character, right? Larger than life, constantly up against the system, whatever it is. And Ian's never been that way. He's smarter than that. He's not going to go right there and tell him to F off right in the courtroom.
Yeah.
So I do thank you guys for having me on the show.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to wrap it up. We're gonna go take this on over to our After Hours podcast. But yeah, I encourage everyone, go please sign the petition. If that's the least you can do, then just do that. And if you can make it to Boston, February 5th, please go.
You'll see Dan and I. freeiannow.org.
Yeah,
not coms, org.
Yeah, .org. Perfect.
See you there, Dan.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, we're going to take this on over to our After Hours podcast. We're going to record it right after this one. If anybody wants to hear that, please sign up for our Patreon. Help out the show. As little as $3 a month, you get access to the upcoming link. That we'll send you a live link and we'll talk about everything and kind of, you get to comment on and, ask us questions and make fun of me if you want, whatever you feel inclined to do. But yeah, so you get to check that out, and you get also access to the back catalog of shows too as well. Also, there's other ways to donate to the show over at prlfans.com. We also have t-shirts for sale over at libertariancountry.com. If you use the code PRL or PRL Podcast, you get a 10% discount. Spend $50 or more and use the code PRL2 for a 20% discount. So until next time, everybody, live free
or die.